Let's do a little deep dive behind the scenes of Firefly Lane to break down the exact lines they kept from the book, the drama over Katherine Heigl's hair color, and Ben Lawson's struggle with the Vancouver winter, literally having to fight off pneumonia during one of his most romantic scenes. Obviously, we know the show was based on a book, but how close do they stick to it?
Without saying anything, she grabbed Kate's arm, pulled her through the living room.
If you've seen other shows based on books, you might be surprised to find out pretty damn close.
Everything was pink. Walls, cabinets, curtains, tile, counters, table.
A significant portion of the dialogue is verbatim to the book's narrative.
Is that your mom? Kate asked, uncertain of what to say. She has cancer.
If you watch closely, you'll notice the little movements that were narrated in the book as well.
Kate glanced back at the door to the living room. She doesn't care if you smoke.
For anyone who read the book, let me know in the comments how spot on you think the show's interpretation is. In the episode where Johnny and Kate accidentally took ecstasy,
It's ecstasy. Yeah, right. Very funny.
I'm not kidding.
there was a bit of movie magic involved, as well as some stellar acting to really sell it.
The printers, the telephone bells, the typewriter, it's like music. Turn it up!
And by movie magic, I really just mean some contact lenses to make their pupils look dilated. Apparently, according to Ben Lawson, it was either they get the contacts or they actually take the ecstasy for the scene. The contact lens vibe just narrowly beat out the method acting technique. Would have loved to see it.
I'm just so glad that we had this talk.
He also said he put one of Kate's leg warmers on his arm because he thought that would be a totally normal thing to do if you were high. Can't say I disagree. From what I've gathered about filming TV shows and movies is that dinner scenes are typically an all-day affair. And that also proved to be true in Firefly Lane. There were also a ton of dinner scenes in the most recent season, but the reason why it took so long to film is because the cast loved to chat with one another at the table.
Following the moon.
Yes, following the moon.
Does it really matter?
Yes.
And it was hard to get anything done. They would also mess around and play little jokes on each other too, which obviously didn't help shorten the workday. Ben would show up to set to film a scene, and Ignacio would make it, well, rather difficult for him to sit down. We love a good confessing your love to someone in the rain moment. Maybe not in the Vancouver winter, though. That, I think, I'd be able to do without. I think the weather was probably better in the Notebook, no? But yeah, Ben Lawson and Sarah Chalke were absolutely struggling in between takes. They had to be wrapped up in a blanket the minute the camera stopped rolling. Ben shared his behind-the-scenes insights, basically that he was trying his hardest not to come down with pneumonia, as he was trying to deliver this deeply romantic but like low-key cheesy speech in the rain.
You're not too much. My love for you is too much.
I can't imagine what would be more awkward. Teeth chattering during your romantic speech or filming your first nude scene on a kitchen counter. We've got a lot to unpack here.
This is the most that I've ever done, like sex scene wise. I've never done this much.
Katherine Heigl said she was only convinced because the female director, Anne Wheeler, sold the scene to her with such artistic vision.
She's like, I want to do this shot where it's just your full naked back.
Katherine, though she had some insecurities about doing those types of scenes at this point in her career, said she felt really safe with Anne directing her.
It sounds so beautiful and sexy, and I would like to believe that I can look beautiful and sexy at 41.
Her only request was that she get to see the final scene when it was finished.
I have never been so naked on a set before. That was really weird.
The Canadian winter was truly putting these actors through the ringer. There's a scene where Sarah Chalke has to actually dive naked into a pool in the freezing cold.
Well, if not now, then when? I mean, this is sort of, we're pushing the limit here.
Fun fact though, every time the cast had to wear essentially nothing, they got to choose their underwear and things like that. But yeah, obviously, even with the freedom of choice when it came to underwear, it doesn't really protect you from things like hypothermia when you have to dive into a pool of freezing cold water.
I did have blue lips. Not a lot of clothing and blue lips.
I think I need a bit of convincing that being an actor is actually a fun job.
It was absolutely part of the challenge, right?
Sarah Chalke has a major sweet spot for the 80s, even before Firefly Lane. So when she landed the role, she was totally prepared for her first wardrobe fitting and even brought in a bunch of her own stuff.
I brought in some sweet stirrup pants and an amazing acid wash pink jean jacket to my first wardrobe fitting.
There were a lot of 80s vibes that they got to get into. Cyndi Lauper dressing up as Madonna.
Right.
you dress like Madonna?
which was actually like fulfilling a childhood dream for her because she used to dress up as Madonna a lot when she was a teenager.
But now to have like a professional team making you get dressed up as Madonna.
Katherine Heigl felt strongly about her character's looks because she really wanted to stick to the book's narrative.
I remember them kind of being like, oh, we don't know if you should be a brunette.
In the book, Tully has curly brown hair, so that's what Katherine wanted to look like on screen.
I said, I'm being a brunette. She's a brunette. I must be a brunette.
It ended up being this whole debacle, and they were low-key pushing for Katherine to be a blonde, but obviously, she wasn't having it, and we got the on-screen brunette Tully we all know and love. There was a bit more movie magic when it came to the portrayal of the 19-year-old version of Kate and Tully. Obviously, Katherine Heigl and Sarah Chalke didn't play the 14-year-old versions of their characters, but Katherine did give a little insight into what it was like to play a 19-year-old in your 40s.
I was like, do you guys have good CGI? Because
At first, they tried using face tape, but it was more cringe than youthful.
looks like we've had very bad and we can't close our mouth.
So they turned to a bit of CGI just to soften their faces a few touches younger. I don't know about you guys, but I love a good wig moment. So I personally loved seeing all those fun 80s hairstyles in the show. The hairstylist, Sarah Copps, did a ton of research into the 80s hair trends before creating the wigs. The theme for the wigs was essentially big bangs and big hair. Rowan Curtis, who played the 80s version of Kate, has always had the same hairstyle her whole life. So, she got to have a lot of fun being a woman of many wigs. She said her favorite look was the Dorothy Hamill wig. Absolutely iconic.
You look like Velma from Scooby-Doo.
It's actually a Dorothy Hamill.
You might be surprised to find out that one of the most difficult things for the costume and makeup team to keep up with was everyone's eyebrows. I can't say I took note of it, but I kind of want to go back and look at the brow styles for each decade they were in. They wanted the eyebrows to represent, as best they could anyway, the look of the decade they were shooting for. They kept going back and forth between the 90s, which the vibe was a very thin brow, and the 70s, which was pretty much the opposite, so they had a difficult time keeping it consistent for every shot. And speaking of consistency, they really had me fooled that we were in Seattle this whole time. Like I've mentioned above though, they shot most of the show in Vancouver. They filmed across the Seawell Water Walk and in local places like Gastown Bar. It was also filmed in Langley, a small town just an hour outside of Vancouver, which Rowan Curtis, a Vancouver native who has lived there her entire life, had never even been before. Firefly Lane's big theme is friendship, which is extremely obvious that doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. Those long dinner time chats say a lot. It's also clear that sticking to the book is super important for the actors and the writers, as well as keeping those specific decade styles on point. What was your favorite behind the scenes moment?